This is Brain Software episode 104, where we talk about the misuse of hypnosis and we answer more listener questions about hypnosis for sleep, everyday trances, instant inductions, and hypnotizing analytical people. Enjoy this. It's a good one.
Of course, there's a teleological error and there's a categorical fallacy. And there's a damn lot of good that can be done when we discover a consolidation of the Venn diagram in question, and people need to listen to the sort of Aristotelian framework that will, Shut up, dude, you're talking management, speak word salad, man! So here we go, dude. I'll earn a solid $20 Canadian for this announcement, man! That's over $15 US, Scro! But let's move along with the show and say a big hello to that crazy Tesla driving fitness freak himself, Brain Boy number 2, Chris Thompson.
Welcome, fellow Storm Riders. This is Brain Software Podcast episode 104, and thank you, Dave Ambrose, and welcome to all of you who are still here and still rocking in the rooter after 6 years of 5-star Brain Software podcasts. The Hypnotic storm has blown out the windows of your brain's abode. And zipped its way right up the Ranahuza. Ooh. So let's welcome to the world's only podcast that feels like a slow recovery from a mild kick to the groin, the elder statesman of hypnotic refreshment. Yeah. That beater bopping trance clown extraordinaire, the walking, talking, living hypnoticon, Mike Mandel.
Yes, Christopher, we are back with Podcast 104, and what a rooter rockin' podcast this is going to be.
Oh, it's going to be so much fun. I've just been looking forward to recording this ever since we set up the show notes. So let's dive right in. Before we get to the main content, which I previewed already, we have an amazing training coming up with James Tripp,
living legend,
hypnosiswithouttrance.com. You can check out his YouTube channel and get to know him a bit better. He's an amazing guy. We just did an audio interview with him, which will go live at some point between now and whenever. It'll be live at some point, and you'll hear from us about it. But we've got James coming in to Toronto September 22nd, 23rd, which is a Saturday-Sunday weekend. And you can find out more about that at MikeMandelHypnosis.com/James, because he will be teaching for 2 days on day 1, how to elicit hypnotic phenomenon.
That'll be a blast for people who are afraid to produce these phenomena. He'll give you the keys, the inner secrets.
So you're confident. And then day 2 is all about change work, so that you're confident not only creating the phenomenon, but creating the change so that you can charge money to people in your hypnosis business and make this a great real lifestyle.
And Chris and I will be there in the class studying along with you.
You got it. And on top of that, we are also all heading to Vegas for HypnoThoughts Live.
Number 4 for us.
Make sure you're there, because it's going to be amazing, amazing stuff. And head on over to MikeMandelHypnosis.com/HT Live 2018. That's HT Live 2018. So you can find out more about what we're doing. And
awesome.
Let's move on. What's our word for the day, Mike?
The think tank word for today. I do actually draw these from Savo Bokacek's think tank. They're randomly generated words, and it is digest or digest, which really depends on the pronunciation. So what is that saying to you, Chris?
Well, digest, the short version of something. So the Coles Notes, the cheat sheet. And then to digest, the metabolic process, essentially, of having food move through you, like to really to process something.
Yes. Now that's interesting, because it says that to me too. Mm-hmm. Like when you said the Coles Notes version, which is the Cliff Notes version, a digest, or like Reader's Digest, is an encapsulation. This is very interesting. And then you talked about processing, like digesting something. The two go very well together. What if you were to look at, or one were to look at their hypnosis work as turning it into a digest? What are the key elements, breaking it down to all the key primary elements and digesting them thoroughly to do stellar work instead of trying to half master a million things? They say the difference between the greats in any field and the average is the greats have mastered the basics.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. You know what that reminds me of? About a month ago, I thought of a really cool idea that I will admit fully that I've completely
forgotten,
borrowed from this guy, Vinny Tordovich. He has a really good podcast called Fitness Confidential. And he has so many episodes, like hundreds of episodes, and he consolidated down to 10 of the best. And he put together like a a clear offer or something around it. But I thought, how cool would it be if we had a digest of the first 100 Brain Software episodes, like a consolidated file of, maybe it would just be 3 or 4 hours long or something like that. Because 100 episodes, that's
sounds like one of those things you hire somebody to do.
Yeah, that's it. But I'm thinking, because we have 100 episodes, that's about, say, 50 hours of material. Yeah. What if we had somebody go through that and edit it down to the 3 or 4 hours of the most valuable content?
Well, you know what I think we should do, Chris? I think it's brilliant.
If anyone wants to have us do that, let me know.
We should hire Ken Sweatman to do it.
Yeah.
Because he could easily handle a long story.
It's hilarious. Okay. Well, that's another digest we should do of the stupid humor. It's embedded in them all.
Let's talk about open frame.
All right, let's do it. Go.
Open frame is what we do in our classes after every break, after lunch, and first thing in the morning in our live classes at University of Toronto. And open frame I got from my mentor, Derek Baumer, who got it from John Grinder. And the basic idea is we take questions on anything to do with hypnosis or NLP in the class. And this is the open frame we do in these podcasts as well. We welcome your emails and your text messages through your Facebook messages and also audio messages. And we answer your questions in Mailbag, which is now.
We've never actually talked about it as being called open frame on the podcast before. I like that.
This is brilliant, and I'm taking full credit for that.
Because in the live class, that's what we call it, and we do about 3 of them a day or more. 4 a day. 4 or 5. 4 a day. We do a lot of open frames in the live hypnosis training. So
in a week, people get 19 open frames. The first one.
And I want to, before we get into answering the questions, I want to say that a lot of the times people send us these questions in text format. They email us or they use the Facebook interface, They use Facebook and they go to our Mike Mandel Hypnosis page and they send us essentially a messenger message. But we would love it if you folks would record these as audio, send them to us. That way we can play them. We can edit them right into the podcast and answer them. It'll make it more feel like a call-in show. But anyway, that said, we'll consolidate the questions, the digest version of the questions, and we will answer them. So
I'm gonna ask the first email here, and let's see what you come up with here, Chris, as an answer. I've got some ideas already. This one is Leo writing in, and he said he would like to know, how does one defend against people who intuitively or knowingly use the tools of your trade to manipulate or dominate you? This is assuming that walking away or calling them out directly on it isn't an option, not a preferable one. The reason I ask is because I've often come across such people, and while information that I find raises my awareness about it, I still don't know how to counteract it within social constraints, like handling the alpha in a group, a domineering superior, or anyone with plausible deniability who you just can't call out. So it's very interesting.
Okay.
He's aware of what's happening. He's educated himself, but he's still unable to deal with this when it happens, and he doesn't want to just walk away. What do you make of this?
I think, we need a bit of context, so I invite you, Leo, to send us in more information about some specifics, because it's really hard for me to imagine the same situation that's actually going on in your mind. But that said, I'll give you a metaphor. If you have to counteract somebody else in a physical situation, you need to have skills. So, for example, we have jiu-jitsu, or there's a number of other self-defense skills. And sometimes maybe you don't have the option to actually get involved in a fight, but you just need to make it clear that you know what you're doing and don't mess with me. And so that's probably the same thing I would say here, is in a situation where somebody is attempting to use tools to influence you in some sort of inappropriate way, you have to have your own skills, and you have to be able to do stuff that makes it clear that you're not going to be manipulated. Right. Now, pattern interrupts are a great way to also interact in a situation where you can just shut something down. You can make a joke. You can throw the Jerry intervention. Jerry was so right about you.
The Jerica or Monty. The Monaco or Jerry interventions. We're great in this, especially when you do the Jerry intervention and you look at the other people present with a bit of a smile, like this is something that they're in on.
Right.
That has such an unnerving effect on the other person.
Right. And there's so many interventions that we've taught in this podcast. Like, let's review the tag team intervention again that we've talked about before, where somebody's saying something and they're
holding court, like they're just dominating everything, and you want to shut them down. So you have a wingman.
Yeah.
And one of you says something.
Here, you jump in and I'll be your wingman.
Well, that's exactly like the diamond trade in South Africa, where people are smuggling these diamonds out of South Africa illegally in their bodily orifices, and they're bringing poverty to people worldwide as a result of this, because the diamonds aren't being sold on the world diamond market.
It's exactly the same thing.
There is no difference.
So you fire stuff like that. There's all kinds of things that you can do. But first and foremost, just make sure that you are confident that you're in charge of your actions. Nobody can make you do anything. Take responsibility for how you act and how you feel. Your emotional state is your responsibility, not somebody else's.
Right. Now realize too, and I'll piggyback on that because that's bang on, Chris. You need to be in the right ego state for the job. Mm-hmm. And I have 3 ego states that function together, and I've pretty well got them agreeing with each other now. My basic ego state in my daily life, apart from being just damnably hilarious and brilliant, it's a typical ego state that I call the good boy. That's one I developed as a kid, and he wants everybody to be happy. And in Enneagram terms, we'd say that's my 9 wing coming out as an 8. But the good boy isn't good in negotiation, when people try to take advantage, that kind of thing. Yeah. As soon as that situation comes along, he hands the executive off to the assertive ego state.
Yeah, you don't want to be the people pleaser trying to...
The assertive ego state is very confident and does not inflame things into argument, but pauses, listens, and responds assertively, but not aggressively. I think you need to find your own assertive ego state. Of course, I have an agreement between my assertive ego state and my aggressive one too. When the gloves are off and it's down to the crunch, the assertive one hands the aggressive ego state, the executive. And at that point, all hell will break loose.
Remember the difference between assertive is being willing to assert yourself. Usually we're talking about verbally here.
Right. And with your presence.
But it could be physically in terms of how you hold your body.
A lot of eye contact. But an assertive person doesn't interrupt. There's no adrenaline that is getting dropped in the fire. Mm-hmm. Remember the 3 levels of argumentation and discussion. Level 1 is pure data. Level 2, you start to get an adrenaline trickle. People start to get mad. From that, you've got to back off to level 1 by breathing and staying calm and pausing. If you get to level 3, which is drenched with adrenaline rocket fuel, it's screaming, swearing, all bets are off. And that's when men, according to Human Givens theory, have to exit the room. That's why we walk away, women. We're not ignoring you, but we intuitively know we are closer to heart attacks and strokes, and we disengage because women don't get that the same as we do. We have to let our blood chemicals change. So you need to be assertive, like Chris said. It's not with aggression. There's no anger driving it, but it's taking a stance and just repeating your position calmly with eye contact. And it is devastating to the other person if you do it well.
Anybody who raises teenagers, like I am, understands the levels of argumentation and information. Those 3 levels that you just described, oh man, things can go from information to complete nuclear weapons.
Right, almost immediately.
In a household where kids are growing up and learning to assert themselves. But then, of course, the aggressive ego state is the one you need where you're defending yourself physically.
That's the one that, someone's breaking into your house, you've got a neck crank.
But so anyway, we're getting a little bit off of the question.
Not really. Get in touch with your assertive ego state.
What I mean
Find
is,
that one.
So to recenter this, give yourself some tools that you can create some space. So a pattern interrupt is a good way to create some space, time, space, physical space, etc., so that you can figure out what you want to do next. And a simple one that isn't going to offend anybody is the fake phone call or whatever, right? The important text message that came in. Yep, hold on 1 second. Right. Okay, I'll be right back. You guys continue. I'll join you in a second. That kind of thing you can use. There's so many different tools.
Funny thing is, I spun around from my microphone and thought you were on the freaking phone.
Yeah, you thought I was actually on. That's hilarious. So there's some good ones there. I also wanted to add this, Mike. We're going to tie it into the 100 Days of Awesome Challenge.
Yes.
We've been doing on Instagram. If you look at, I can't even speak. If you look at Instagram and you look for the hashtag MMHAwesome, you will find all kinds of stuff that we have been posting and other people who are following the challenge have been posting. One of the videos that I did, I don't know if you've seen it because you and I aren't necessarily in the habit of watching each other's videos immediately.
No, not remotely interested.
I did one on the importance of learning how to say no. And that's another important area here to answer Leo's question. If you can get comfortable learning to say no to people, then you will be more assertive. It is essentially an assertiveness training in its own right. When people are asking you things, oh, can you do this for me? Can you help me with that? Can we partner together on this project? Of course, I've gotten to be pretty good at marketing. So people are constantly approaching me, wanting me to be involved in their business ideas. And I used to be that nice guy wanting that good boy that you just
taking
described.
Up too much of your own time.
Oh, sure, I can help you out. Now, if I want to, I'll say yes, and I'll set clear boundaries around when I'm available or whatever, and make it an ordeal for the other person to get my help. Let's say if I don't want to be freely available all the time, or if I don't really care and don't really want to help, or whatever it is, I've just gotten comfortable saying no.
And you're right on with that, Chris. And this is let's not rush this because this is a key point. I was exactly the same because of the good boy.
There is no difference.
There is no difference. I was exactly the same. And with me, I would take gigs, hypnosis shows I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
Agents would say, oh, like in this case, there was one in Oakville called Clarington's or something years and years ago. I'd done this place about 3 years in a year, burned the audience out. It's like everyone needs
3 times in
a year.
Okay.
Agents just kept putting me back.
Okay.
And so I'm running out of material, right? Because I'm doing 2-hour shows. So then I said, look, I need at least a full year off before I go back there. They didn't listen. The agent just went ahead and booked me like a month later.
Really?
And I said, and this was a big turning point.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not doing it. He said, I'm just asking. It'll be great. I said, no. I said, I've done too much of this. I am not doing it. Well, you're putting me in a bind. I said, I understand how you feel, but I'm not doing it. And I began to stand on no. Now, listen, those of you who need to get in touch with that assertive ego state, it's one thing for us to tell you to do it, but we're going to tell you how to do it as well. Stand up, breathe deeply, get a space on the ground in front of you. You can put a hula hoop or something, a marker down on the floor, a flat, placemat or something to mark a spot.
Or you can imagine it.
Feel unassertive, feel weak standing in there. Step out, leave that behind and see the weak you standing in there. Now imagine someone really assertive who's self-confident. Feel free to use me or Chris or a combination of both of us in your image. Superman,
Jerry Seinfeld.
Jerry Seinfeld. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, maybe
Why not? Somebody maybe with a good
assertive, who's strong and assertive, but not aggressive. Put them in that circle and imagine them standing there, breathing. They're confident. They're taking, what anybody's saying, spinning it back just assertively, without any aggression, without any fear, without any anger, without any sadness, without any guilt. And when you got it really strong, step into that circle, feel it, breathe it, be that person, and then set an anchor. We recommend touching your thumb tip to your ring finger, ring fingertip, press the two together, look at it, and you can say something like assertive and hold it and breathe. Now, step out of the circle, let it all disappear. The next time you need that ego state, fire that anchor and the assertive ego state will show up. The beauty of it is if you do it more and more, your ego state, you can actually negotiate with this, but that's beyond what we're doing in brain software, will start showing up when you need it. And you'll be assertive without being aggressive.
I also want to mention that because you said to the agent, I understand.
Yes.
However, whatever it is, this brings up the agree and repeat strategy, which I think we have in our notes for a little later, but let's just mention it now.
All right.
There is a really great tutorial on this strategy. Mike explains it. In fact, we over deliver. I won't. Oh, why not? I'll spill the beans. We advertise that we're going to give you one video. There's actually 2 videos on the page.
Ooh, double.
But go to MikeMandelHypnosis.com/influence, and that'll take you to a page where you can request this tutorial. And it's free, and it's awesome.
And it's instant assertiveness training.
I'm telling you, this is evergreen content. You taught this, I think, in 1993.
It was the first time I taught it. It was 1992, 93.
And it's still blowing people's minds. And if we have time, we will get into the show notes a little later on a situation where I used this very recently.
And as you know, my friend Neil Strauss, who is a New York Times bestselling author, used to write for Rolling Stone. He wrote all the stuff about the game and all about the world of pickup artists and stuff. Interesting, really smart guy, smart writer. He hired me to come to Hollywood, teach these things.
California,
also,
right?
Yeah, in California, also Whistler, BC, and in Toronto, teaching his group. And this was the hit. They call it Mandeling people now.
Yeah, so that's a free tutorial. So many people get onto our mailing list and into our environment through. We don't spam you, by the way. Don't worry about that. But go to MikeMandelHypnosis.com/influence.
It's free.
And you will love it. It's just a great piece of content.
And become fully functioning clone of us.
Yeah. So what's next?
We've got. Let's hear. I'm going to read this, and you're going to start the answer. Okay. Hello, Mike and Chris. I've been following your podcast. I've bought a number of products from your site. Here's a question for both of you, which I believe has not been fully studied in the theory of hypnosis. You being martial artists and longtime practitioners of hypnosis may have thought about it, I hope. Can hypnosis be allied to adversely disposed subjects? Specifically, how can hypnosis be used on aggressive, unwilling, hostile persons? Please elaborate if possible. Hope to hear your opinion and or in the podcast. Best regards, Max. Let me answer that right off the bat, Chris, and then I want you to jump
There's
in.
a lot of similarity here to the first question, so go on. Yeah,
there is, except now we're moving out of assertion into aggression. Right. And as you know, Chris, I was a police trainer. I still am from time to time. Taught Virginia Department of Criminal Justice, New York State Troopers, RCMP, and so on. And one of the things I teach police is how to deal with aggressive people. And one of the things I teach is a verbal pattern, which works with martial arts as well. And this pattern is, since everything is hypnotic, since all language is hypnotic, by its very nature. And as soon as you're checking to see if it is, you're going into some degree of trance. With this, the verbal pattern is a string sentence.
Oh, okay. So go ahead.
Did you know I was going to go there?
I was wondering where you were going to go. I thought you were going to go to. I thought you were going to go to the idea of matching the assertive / aggressive tone and then bringing it down.
Well, you can do that.
The string sentence, right?
But the string sentence, the idea is you use and instead of but. As soon as you use but with an aggressive person, you are resisting them, and it ramps up their aggression a lot of the time. So I taught police to use and instead. So the first thing you do is you honor their model of the world. This is similar to the video Chris has just told you.
Right, you're really pissed off at me.
I understand you're pissed off. You know, you offer their words back and you switch to and then you lead them the way you want to go. You want them to go. So it could be, I want to kill my brother-in-law. I want to kill that sumbitch. And you say, I understand you want to kill him. And let me just put these handcuffs on you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
by honoring their model of the world and going to and instead of but, you can lead them somewhere else.
Right. And then, so on top of that, one of the, and this maybe you would use this first, the one I'm about to disclose. Maybe you would use string sentence first. It really depends on the situation. But another one that Mike has taught is the idea of matching the level of assertion / aggression in the voice. So if somebody's really pissed off at you and they're talking, you will go in and you will respond to them like that, but then you will just slowly bring your tone down to a calm tone.
Actually, match it just below their level.
Right, not quite.
So you're not mad at them, you're mad along with them.
And you can even stand alongside them if you want to model that, if it's safe, right?
Yeah,
instead of being confrontational.
You don't want to be face to face. You want to be turned off to an angle a bit, so you're not showing yourself as confrontatory.
On a common point.
Let me tell you how well this works. Many years ago, I had a Volvo, and I went to Lawrence Park Volvo to get some servicing done. Early in the morning,
love this
had
story.
to get snow tires put on. I had a 7:30 a.m. appointment, and I had to get snow tires put on, and they rad flushed out, all winterized and everything ready for the Canadian winter. I got there. There'd been a huge flu epidemic in Toronto. There was no service manager. It was a mechanic manning one of the two desks, and the other desk was empty. I walked in, and I said, hi, I've got an appointment at 7:30 for winterizing and the snow tires put on. My keys I'd set the keys on the desk. This mechanic in overalls grabs the keys, throws them on the desk. They bounced on the floor and he didn't pick them up. He said, oh, great. How am I going to manage this? He said, I got a mechanic sick. I got both service managers sick with flu. I'm manning the desk and there's 2 orders ahead of you. How the hell am I supposed to get this done? This is ridiculous. And I just got mad with him. I said, this is ridiculous. How the hell are you supposed to get this done with all those people sick with flu? I totally understand your position, sir. I'll come back another time. And I calmed everything down after mirroring his state, and he paused for a sec. He said, you know what? If you can stick around here, I'll bump you to the top of the list. He took my service form and put it on top of the stack.
Boom.
And that was it. And I went in ahead of the other guys who were in the waiting room. And just all I did was mirror his words, offered his language back, mirrored his anger just below him. And when I calmed down, he followed me down.
Those of you listening, realize...
Which is all of you.
Yeah, that's a hilarious thing. Those of you listening... It's a podcast. If you're not listening, you didn't hear me say that.
Yeah.
This is hypnosis.
Yes, it is.
Hypnosis is easy. This is natural stuff. Think about using this in your own life. Think about how many times you can affect change just through the way you use language.
Brilliant.
Because we all communicate with language every single day. It is your responsibility to learn how to use language more effectively. All right. What's next? Is there anything else you want to add on that one?
No, I think that we covered a lot of stuff there. Let's go on to this question. I'm going to read this, and you can jump in on this.
Okay, this is Kate's question.
Kate's question. Question for next Q&A, please. I became a hypnotherapist as I was fascinated, having visited one myself for sleep problems. It worked for a few months only. Since then, I have seen other hypnotherapists, NLP trainers, sound therapists, shiatsu, as I mix with all these people, but with no effect, and self-treatment too. The problem is less since I stopped nursing last October to follow my dream, which I'm doing. However, I still have a problem with early morning waking. I may get back to sleep after 2 hours when it's often time to get up. I feel crap. The day is more difficult. What advice can you give, please? I also find sleep problems the least effective thing to help people with and wonder if my own experience is affecting that. Many thanks, Kate.
This is a tough one without a lot of detail. I would need to get I would need to get into a more detailed discussion with you, Kate. If you were my client, I would want to understand a lot more about what's going on in your life, and in particular, a lot of the patterns around when you're going to sleep, etc. When you wake up, what's going on? Are you waking up with your brain going nuts around ideas in your business or in your life? Or are you waking up because of some physiological issue around, having tea late at night or alcohol late at night, something like that? Really hard to say. But we do have a product on the website on dealing with sleep problems, and it is a good product because it not only uses hypnosis, but it does conscious teaching as well.
Right.
So that's one place I would start, and then I would want to know more about what's stopping you. There's
a hell of a lot that can affect sleep. It can be dietary. You can have food sensitivities. Red wine does it for some people. My wife, if she has more than a glass of red wine, it screws up her sleep. But if she has white wine, there's no problem because it doesn't have the tannins in it, which are related to histamine. Mm-hmm. And there's so many possible things this can be. Getting sufficient exercise, to make the system tired without exhausting it. Over-exercise keeps you awake.
Yeah.
And there's so many different things that can fit here. The one I will point out, and again, I'm not a doctor, so I can't prescribe, I can't diagnose, and I can't treat for specific things. Let me just tell you what's worked for some people. Some people find that taking Nux vomica, Nuxvomica, also called Colabrina, a homeopathic medicine in the potency of 30C, will shut off the middle of the night wake up. You don't take it constantly, but if you wake up around 3 a.m., take a couple of the pellets, people fall back asleep again really, really well. And but check out the sleep product. That's what I highly recommend. We're not trying to sell you a product, but we put so much information into that, including tapping methods and self-hypnosis.
Yeah, make sure that your room is dark. Make sure your room is cool. I like to have a fan running. I just find that the white noise is really awesome. Yeah,
cat on the bed.
Make sure that you haven't been on a screen, at least without filtering out the blue wavelengths, for hours before bed. So if you're going to go to bed at, let's say, 11 p.m., I would not be on your device past maybe 9 o'clock or so, something like that. Make sure that you're not having caffeine late into the afternoon. Make sure that you're staying up late enough so that you're actually physically tired. You're not trying to go to bed at 10 o'clock when maybe your body's not really ready to go to bed until 11:30, something like that.
And the more consistent you can be, and the less you can wake up with an alarm, wake up naturally, the better your sleep will be. Last night I went to bed early at 10:30. I usually go to bed about 11:30, and I woke up naturally at 5:45, and I felt amazing.
Yeah.
Of course, I have been doing intermittent fasting too, which probably had something to do with it.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of which, make sure you're considering diet too. So think about what is it that you're eating. Your body is fueled by what you eat. If you're not eating a healthy diet, don't expect your body to behave appropriately when it comes to your energy levels and your sleep quality.
Remember too, refined carbs before bed are a nightmare because they make your blood sugar crash in the middle of the night.
They're just a disaster, period.
Most of the time. So if you're going to snack at night, a bit of protein is best. Let's go to another question, Chris. We have a short one here.
All right.
Then we should go right into 100 Days of Awesome a bit, and then we'll wrap up. We have a question here from Darshika. What is the best induction? We're talking hypnosis again for very analytical people.
All right. So what do you want to say about that?
Well, I like either a leverage or leverage induction, depending whether you're American or British, which is the use of catalepsy. We teach all of these in our power inductions training, where you create a cataleptic limb that will put the person in a spin in a very odd state immediately. Realize if 60% of Westerners are primarily visual accessors, meaning they're representational systems, they'll go to visual first, and auditory and kinesthetic being smaller groups. Since most people are visual accessors, as soon as you put them into the kinesthetic state of having a limb floating in the air and the feeling of that, the tingling sensation or whatever, they're in an altered state immediately. And you can then cascade that into a trance with no difficulty. It works with auditories for the same reason. And it works with kinesthetics because they're used to being in touch with the physical body. So any of the wonderful inductions we teach, the little shell induction or shelf induction, little shell station induction, you pour gasoline on the person and chase them with a match. The little shelf induction, breathing with the hand induction, kinesthetic ambiguity,
single finger catalepsy.
All of these are great ways to get people out of analysis because I know what you're saying. If you're doing these typically stupid dursative inductions where you're attempting to suggest someone into trance,
your eyelids are getting heavy,
and the person's going, no, they're not. Yeah, your face
You're
is
becoming
relaxed.
sleepy.
No, I'm not. The analytical person's going to analyze. No, I don't. Yeah. So get them out of analysis.
Stop reading scripts at people.
Body.
If you are a script reader, learn how to do hypnosis without scripts. Learn how to calibrate the person in front of you and do hypnosis on the actual person.
Deal with a human being.
Just like you would have a conversation with an actual person.
And if you treat it as a conversation, there's no fear of a conversation failing, is there?
Exactly.
Oh, what if I have a conversation and it doesn't work?
Nobody wonders that. How do I have a conversation? Now, and by the way, we're not making fun of the question.
No,
here.
not at all.
We're discussing it in a way that I hope will be helpful to the listeners. We would not worry, how do I have a conversation with an analytical person, right? We would give them a conversation that would be interesting to an analytical person. So how do we make hypnosis work for a so-called analytical person? We give them something to analyze.
Right. Nice.
That is how we do it. Now, I believe it is time for a commercial break.
Yes, Chris, why don't you cue the commercial?
A lot of people are looking for answers these days. Answers to their ant problems. And I'm no different because these little peckers are driving me crazy. For that reason, the clever folks at the Shizjig Corporation have spent a lot of time creating a fully functioning ant spray. And it comes in 6 delicious flavors. Simply add it to the legs of your office chair and your ant problems are a thing of the past. And all the fine Shizjig products are now available in Alaska and Mexico. Ask for them at your local amusement park before you get on that crazy roller coaster ride. Shizjig products, not just for New Year's Eve.
Okay, so let's look at some of these. We were talking about 100 Days of Awesome. Let's touch on a couple of things we've been doing, Chris. So I think we're up to like day 46 or something.
Yeah, today I think is 47 as we're recording this.
You were actually talking about, I know it's not hypnotic, but it's interesting because you're teaching people to be more awesome, as I am. What about this financial planning thing you did?
Yeah.
1 minute.
Okay, so all of these videos are 1 minute videos. You can check them out on Instagram or our Facebook page. And it's really about 100 days of ideas to make your life more awesome. And it occurred to me, well, one of the things we haven't really touched on, but is a major source of stress for people in their lives is money, right? If you don't have enough money, then obviously life can get stressful. How to pay the bills, how to do the things you want. Money doesn't solve all of your problems. So you can speak to any number of, well, I don't know if you have access to billionaires or I don't, but if I was to interview 10 billionaires and say, gee, does money make your life perfect? No, obviously not. Not all of your problems in life disappear. Financial stresses disappear only, but relationship stresses and all those other things
all the other
are still there. But isn't it nice to be able to close the book on a whole source of potential problems? And those are the financial problems. Well, the way to make sure that you have sufficient financial resources is really, it does take time, but there's 2 essential things that everybody needs to do. And the first thing is you have to pay yourself first. That is an expression that I'm sure anybody who's studied anything about financial planning knows. Pay yourself first. You have to have a budget in place so that you can carve off a certain percentage of your income and dedicate that towards investing. That leads to the second piece. The second piece is you have to think long-term and make long-term investments. You have to think about buy and hold. The idea, look at Warren Buffett, look at other great investors. Buy stuff that's great and invest in it forever. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about all the investing part of it, but don't fall for all the crap around finding some guy who's a financial expert who's going to move you in and out of these different investments and trade your way to wealth. Not going to happen.
Nice.
Simplest thing would just be follow what Tony Robbins. Go get a copy of Tony Robbins' book, Money, Master the Game. Start there and move your way up.
Back to basics.
Yeah,
amazing.
Keep it simple, guys.
The one I wanted to talk about is the one I'm talking about today in 100 Days of Awesome, which is building bridges. And when Chris and I began working with Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy, when he took over running all of my career, we became business partners and just kept building it into this hypnotic force to be reckoned with. The interesting thing was, in our early days, we saw ourselves as in competition with other people.
Oh, totally.
Doing similar things. Our attitude sucked. We were on edge. Like, what are they doing? Are they listening to our material?
All those other crappy script reading hypnotists.
But guess what happened? We realized once after going to HypnoThoughts, these are great people. And we we've started building bridges to people now. So, well, we've been doing it for years. They're no longer competition. Carl Smith said, there is no competition.
They're our friends.
And
they're our
Igor
colleagues.
Ledochowski, there is no competition. And James Tripp and Melissa Tiers and these great people, Steve Rame, we don't compete with each other because we all put our own spin on things. My question to you is, what bridges can you build in your life, in your relationships that will get rid of competition and cause this unity of purpose where everybody benefits? Zig Ziglar, the great motivational speaker, said years ago, you can get anything you want out of life if you help enough other people get what they want. And I think he's right.
Yeah. And that also reminds me of the fact that those years in the past, we were thinking so much about all the areas of hypnosis where we saw weakness, other people not doing things correctly. And so, oh, well, those guys all suck. Well, as soon as we started going to conferences like Hypnothoughts Live and building friendships, we realized there's a whole nother side, I said another.
Thank you, Ted
There's
James.
a whole other side of this where we're seeing the great stuff. We're seeing the awesomeness that people are doing and teaching.
Build those bridges.
And that's just a phenomenal thing. The last one, and we're going to mention it because I promised I would, is I want to talk about quickly how I used Mike's agree and repeat strategy.
Well, it's not my own. It's not original.
Yeah, well, it's just I like the way you've packaged it and taught it. And, of course, I can probably teach something from a thermodynamics textbook in a boring way or an interesting way. And I didn't make up the material, right?
Right.
So I'm just thinking back to my engineering past or whatever. But there are fun ways of teaching things and there are not so fun ways of teaching things. And the way you teach the agree and repeat strategy, I just think is really interesting. Anyway, the simple strategy is that you agree in principle, but you repeat your request. So I wanted to make a change to the cell phones in my family. My wife, my daughter, myself were all on data plans. And I saw that the provider had a better deal on their website, but the deal was supposedly only available to new signups or hardware upgrades. And we weren't in that situation. We're existing customers. And I simply called. I made my request clear. The woman on the other end of the phone was very nice. Her name was Courtney. And she said, okay, sir, let me see if I can add this plan to your account. I'm not sure if I'll be able to. She put me on hold. She came back, couldn't add it. I'm sorry, sir. I'm not able to add that plan to your account. Well, normally people would go, oh, well, okay, at least I tried. I just said to her, understood. Thanks for your effort on that, Courtney. I still want that plan. So what's the next step? Who do we have to involve?
Nice.
Right? And she thought about it and
flexibility.
went, well, and she tried again to sort of say, well, I can't, I just couldn't add it, sir. I understand that you couldn't add it, but somebody probably can. Who do we need to involve to make sure that I can get this done? Because I've done things like this in the past with you, and it's always been great, and I've been a long-term customer, haven't I? Yes. Okay. Let me just put you on hold again and check with some of my colleagues. So she puts me on hold. She comes back a couple of minutes later and says, well, I haven't been able to figure out how to add that plan to your account, but I can add this other plan, which she then went on to describe, which was the same amount of money that I wanted to pay and even more data.
Nice,
and I just said, well, thank you. I said, that's even better than I expected. Let's go ahead with that. She made the change. It was all done. The phone call took maybe 15 minutes.
But it was worth it. And here's the
more
thing
than I wanted.
Chris, you thanked her at the end.
I was nice.
She feels like she won.
Yeah.
Everybody wins that way.
Yep.
Yeah.
I told her how appreciative I was. There was nothing. All I was assertive in a nice way. I was asserting what I wanted,
but you weren't aggressive.
Through
That's
the
assertion.
agree and repeat strategy and appreciating her efforts.
And again, they'll find the link in the podcast at MikeMandelHypnosis.com/influence. Influence.
All
nice.
right.
Chris, I've got a metaphor now.
Okay.
And we're going to round this out. This is the metaphor of the square in the clouds. And it's another true story. Our best metaphors come from our own life as we teach our students. 2 summers ago, I was in Minden, Ontario, where our cottage is. So not really a cottage, more of a cabin. And right on a lake, beautiful, pristine, spring-fed lake. And one afternoon, I was sitting out there. It's just paradise to me, relaxing, alternately reading and falling asleep in a lounge chair in the shade and looking at my wife out on her, paddle board out in the water. And I was sitting there and I looked up, and the Minden area, because there's a lot of steep hills leading down to lakes, there's a microclimate where the weather can change very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. And I saw in the cloud an opening in this bank of clouds that was a perfect square. And they say that squares and straight lines don't occur in nature, but this did. And I photographed it. It was so mind-blowing. An actual square, a blue sky in a bank of white clouds. And I said to my wife, look at that. Look at that. We couldn't get over it. Well, the funny thing is, it must be something in the structure of the surrounding hills, the prevailing winds, because last summer I was sitting out there and looked up, and the square in the clouds was there again.
Fantastic. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the Brain Software Podcast. This has been episode 104 with Mike Mandel and I'm Chris Thompson. And remember to head on over to our website. You can check out all the live events that we're going to be doing. Mike Mandel, hypnosis.com/events. That's the page where they're always up to date. And as we mentioned, MikeMandelHypnosis.com/influence if you want to get the free tutorial on the agree and repeat strategy.
Yes, get it. It'll change your life.
Thanks for listening, and good night!
Mr. Thompson, I ever tell you a rather remarkable story of Dennis Bryce Morgan, Henry Squatter, and the Window of Doom?
No, I haven't heard this one.
Very interesting. We were in the mess hall one night, and it was a horrible storm outside, and Squatter was rather frightened of the lightning and the thunder. We're all sitting around the table finishing up a remarkable dinner, and the old Colonel, Peter Fitzwadsworth Smythe, was there in his wheelchair. He was dabbing his lips with a paper napkin after swigs of brandy. Well, not much of a napkin, really. Just a bit of brown paper stapled together and dipped in vinegar. And he was sitting in his chair, and he was all wondering and looking out the window at the storm raging outside, the rain coming down. It was probably the end of November. Might have been the first week in December. Bryce Morgan pointed to the window, and he said, have you ever seen the Window of Doom, Squatter? He looked frightened. He said, what's the Window of Doom, Bryce Morgan? He said, the Johnnies know about it, don't you? And Johnny Layfimney Woe nodded, and so did Johnny Wortman and Johnny Brookman Dingty last year. He said, come here, let me show you. And Bryce Morgan, he was one of those wonderful chaps. He had a terrific sense of humor. We knew something was up. But he was never harmful or hurtful or unkind. It was always just in good-natured fun. He brought him over to the window, and he said, have a look at this. Here, lift it open as wide as you can. And Squatter, naturally fascinated, lifted the window open as wide as he could. Bryce Morgan pushed him out. We're on the third floor. He broke both his legs and dislocated his spine. It's the funniest damn thing. We finished our drinks and put him in a stretcher and took him to the infirmary. He required 16 hours of surgery. Just, the most wonderful sense of humor. Good nature.